All right, now that I've hit the record button,
Right.
let's go back to that amazing intro that I totally whiffed on.
I can't even remember what I said. No. Uh,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, so the ideal customer profile and the importance of being really intentional and disciplined about that.
Yeah.
And one of this is something I noticed after 29 years in corporate and sales leadership, and then 7 years going out on my own and
Mhm.
realizing that and working with small, medium businesses, primarily B2B businesses, a lot of them are technical sales because that's where I grew up.
Yeah.
I'm an electrical engineer by education. So it was a very natural thing for me to ask the question, okay, well, how do you know? So this is the salesperson and the sales leader, you
Mhm.
know, how do you know who to target? How do you know how do you take a purchase list or something like that and figure out how am I going to make my number out of this list, right?
Yeah.
So at a certain point, small medium businesses they struggle with the part about, okay, this is our goal and we're going to achieve that goal by selling our product or service to our to customers.
Mhm.
Okay. When you start to institutionalize that and you start to you start to mature the company and mature the sales efforts toward being more focused, making sure that the energy that you're expending is very focused and you're using a rifle shot instead of a shotgun, right? Because
Yeah.
that's very common. You just kind of let's see where we can get the business. To be fair, a lot of business owners, that's how they became successful in the first place,
Yeah.
is they had something very interesting and valuable, and they just kind of started talking to everybody that might have the problem they can solve.
Mhm.
And so narrowing in on, what is the biggest value for us growing the company, um, could be lots of different dimensions like profitability, could be more strategic, like working with this company is going to give me social proof
Mhm.
of my effectiveness of my solution, and I can use that then to um, approach other businesses that are similar or adjacent, these kind of things.
Yeah.
So as the business development, I would say, approach matures, it starts to become obvious, okay, well, we need to figure out a better way to define who it is exactly we're looking for, right? So I've heard you use the term, and I've heard others use the term, the firmography, right?
Yeah.
So and then translating that statement of, okay, here is our ideal customer profile, and translating that and cascading that to the operational level in the sales organization
Mhm.
I mean, what I find is you have to be very intentional and very disciplined about doing that, right?
Yeah.
So, example might be you hire a couple of salespeople, you're starting to get traction. You have said the easiest one to explain is the geographic. So
Yeah.
let's say you have an ideal customer profile, ideal prospect that is within a 1 hour drive. You have a services business. All of your pricing models and everything are based on we don't have to drive more than an hour to get to any of our customers,
Yeah.
right? So you say, okay, you hand that to the salespeople, and being really good salespeople and hopefully very aggressive toward finding new opportunities, they come across something looks really good, but it's an hour and 20-minute drive.
Yeah.
And the salesperson is going to be really good about coming into your office and explaining to you how it's so important that that company knows a lot of others and would be really good for us, and it's really strategic. And you say, well, it doesn't meet our ideal customer profile. And the salesperson says, yeah, but it'll help me make my number, and it'll help us make our.
Yeah.
Then everything starts unraveling because what happens is the sales leader says, okay, well, we're gonna have to put some more, we're gonna have to have a higher price to offset the extra costs of the extra travel.
Right.
And the salesperson says, well, hold on a minute. That company is looking at our competitors and they're going to be lower price than us if we do that.
Hmm.
And the sales leader says, listen, this is ideal. This is outside of our ideal customer profile. You have to, yeah, but okay, break down, do it just this once, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it starts
The
to get.
slippery slope right there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So in practice, what really happens so let's say that salesperson is successful in capturing that business.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you have sacrificed margin, probably, right? Because you're not getting price to offset the extra cost, right? The extra selling price.
Yeah.
Um, and also you now have probably have if the salesperson's really aggressive, now psychologically you have allowed the salesperson to create a band around the 1 hour travel time,
Yeah.
which adds another 20 minutes, and now he's got a bigger territory. So that's awesome. Now I can go, well, you didn't say that, you didn't even imply that, but psychologically, with a good salesperson, they're saying, okay, now I have more territory I can work with.
Right.
And the worst possible case is you start repeating that pattern, and
Hmm.
then people start pushing. So the part about, and I put it this way, sometimes it's just as important or more important to know when to say no
Yeah.
than having a very clear and intentional definition of your ideal customer profile.
Yeah. Yeah, when you were talking about that, and I was thinking, for myself, I don't have a driving radius, but I do have so many phone calls I can make in a day, and to your point about being intentional and like the trade-offs, if I call, everybody, I might get, and this is generous, if I call everybody, I'm not going to get 1 out of 100, but let's say I call a really broad, non-narrowed group, and I'm like, well, they have a sales team, therefore my stuff's relevant, therefore I'll call them. I might
Mhm.
get 1 out of 100, but I'm leading potentially if I'd been more narrowed down, might get 10 out of 100 if I was really more intentional. And every single day I'm leaving 9 people that are interested on the sidelines because I'm not being focused and I'm not being intentional with who I'm reaching out to. Um, and it's one of those things where it's kind of counterintuitive. It's like, well, I got less people to talk to, and it's like, yeah, and that's a good thing. And your initial thought and it makes sense to be like, well, wait, that's not good for me. I want everybody to be on my product. It's good for everybody to be involved in it. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, when you're seeing like this, let's call it like degradation or dilution of ICP, is it typically like something where it wasn't intentional from the start, so that's why it's already starting diluted, or is it more of what you just explained, which is the slow chipping away at, that strict definition that they have?
What I see in the early stages is the difficulty in translating the ICP
Mhm.
into actionable,
Yeah.
to actionable and operational level, right? And the expectation, I guess again, the discipline in uh, communicating clearly from the leadership level
Yeah.
that this is not a suggestion. We've thought through how we're going to make our targets.
Hmm.
And our targets include um, scaling. The targets include um, a minimum profitability, right?
Hmm.
So if we start to stray from our ICP, because we designed the ICP, we designed the ideal customer profile to yield, right, the profitability, the contribution margin based on desirability, or let's say it's the degree of savings that are customer enjoys by
Yeah.
adopting our solution. So we've worked all that out. So all that math is mathing. And then so if you stray from that and start inserting other things,
Hmm.
not only starts to make the math not math anymore, but it also uh, siphons off or leaks energy. So this is a big thing in the I'm a graybeard, and the older I get, the more this is relevant, right? You only have so many hours and so much energy to expend in achieving the goals. So you need to look at it like if I'm spending 2 hours a week chasing something that has a less than, a contribution margin that's lower than what we planned, that means that 2 hours are not spent developing the relationships, developing the business opportunities with the types of projects, types of product sales that make our model work for our profit goals. So
Hmm.
it kind of it hangs together. The part about the leadership describing in a way that's impactful at the operational level, I think is where a lot of things break down, right? The
Yeah.
leadership team says, "This is what we figured out," and maybe skip the step of, "And here's why we have it set up this way."
Yeah, so is that because that's what it sounds like. It's not the actual creation of the ICP that's the problem, it's the communication of it. And it sounds like why is the big one.
Right.
Is there anything else that you see in the gap? And then in terms of like if I'm a leader trying to construct how I'm going to communicate and uphold this, how would you recommend the delivery of the why and any other pieces that are important to beyond just saying, here's a piece of paper, here's all the criteria, go for it.
Yeah, I think one thing is impact on the company. So if the company has like a bonus program,
Hmm.
word gets around, the salesperson selling stuff that's outside the ICP, and
Yeah.
the profit contribution or the contribution margin is falling, that's impacting others. That could be one thing. Um,
Hmm.
Another thing is, so talk about salesperson compensation for a second. Don't want to go too far afield, but it's absolutely relevant. Um, So I run into this situation where a business owner will say, I want to tie the incentive pay for a salesperson to margin contribution or to gross margin. So that in theory, that helps, right? So the salesperson is saying, I don't want a discount if I bring an opportunity and it's non-ICP, but I can still achieve the contribution margin, maybe that's worth talking about. But I'm pretty sure that the leadership is going to say no because they're being very disciplined about that, right?
Yeah.
So the one downside about that is, especially if the company is doing anything custom, uh, I warn about, you know, salesperson getting involved on the ops side. So a
Hmm.
simple example is construction company. Salesperson is the incentive pay is tied to the gross profit of a project.
Yeah.
If you do that and the salesperson is a really good salesperson, is watching their commission payment according to the gross profit of a project, and
Yeah.
they start to hear project cost overruns, you know, they're going to go visit the job. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go visit the job site and find out what
Yeah.
the heck's going on,
Yeah.
because those guys over there are causing my paycheck to be smaller, right? If
Yeah.
that's not happening, you have to wonder how good your salesperson is, but that's a whole nother podcast, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you keep the salesperson focused on their goal, which is bringing the contract in, and the pricing model, the margin and all that stuff, and the risk factors and all that. That should be, estimating an operation should be concerned about that. Um, and for businesses where it's it's more transactional, the contribution margin is more predictable, that is an option, is to pay based on gross margin, and then that kind of helps to discipline the salesperson's behavior toward the ICP and not
Yeah.
straying.
Even a product-based business where you're not having necessarily like the fluctuation based on if somebody is chasing around the ops team and be like, hey, stop it. Like I need
Yeah,
to get my
yeah,
commission check.
yeah,
I worked in a situation where we were granted the ability to discount X amount, but then that would eat into our commission. And so I was
yeah,
like, okay, we were aware of that.
yeah,
But what ended up happening, and this is the unintended consequence, is they would be like, well, instead of trying to sell and learn the technique and get better and keep things at cost or at margin, they would just be like, hey, you could go this different route, but if you work with me directly, I'll always make sure you get this 20% discount. And so
yeah,
they were basically just walking around being like, here's my discount dealer over here. And it's, yes, their margin wasn't changing or they were hitting their own bottom line, but it was easier for them to, instead of improving themselves, just start offering discounts. So your incentive to work with me is if you work with me, you get a discount. If you don't work with me, you go around me to, HQ, you're not going to get the same discount. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like the whole point of this is to get the products out here, to make our presence more known, to, develop these relationships. And you guys
mhm,
have turned this into, if you want a discount, talk to me if you guys want to buy anything. And it's like, well, there's no value add in there. Like you could have just
exactly.
done 20% off every Friday if that's what you're trying to do and not hire the sales force for it. Um,
You're making the point about the value sale, right? That buried
yeah,
in what you're describing is the value sale, right? So, and this is again a different podcast, but
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, we're drifting there a little bit.
right, right, drift a little bit. So you look at the skill of the salesperson and the training and the coaching of the
Yeah,
salesperson. If you're in a commodity type business and there's a high price sensitivity, um, that the skill set is a little bit different than the value sell and the the value-based relationship driven kind of sales environment
yeah,
are two kind of a little bit different wiring of the salesperson and also needs a different skill set from the sales leader perspective, right? So the
yeah.
coaching and training and the top cover and escalation and all that stuff that happens in a complex sale or a relationship, a value-based relationship-driven sale is identifiably different than a commodity type sale where it's volume and pricing, right? Um, yeah, so
And I think, and to tie it back to your point about ICP degradation, right? If we're talking about, the value that should have been sold in that situation was time savings, convenience, quality, and then it became, well, I'm just going to send out those discounts. And so if you're looking at it, the ICP is the person who values their time, they're busy, they need high quality products, they don't need to think twice about this. Versus if you start doing that discount, you're looking for all of a sudden you start bringing in bargain hunters, and now you're
yes,
competing on something different. And so just that move there has completely brought in a whole other business model, revenue model that's going to degrade it. And it's as simple as letting the salesperson have a discount code,
yeah,
essentially,
yeah,
right? And then,
yeah,
or at least not teaching them how to, correctly identify ICP. And
yeah,
then maybe like if they can correctly adhere to it, they can go, okay, in this situation, we're allowed to give you a discount, but it's only because of this bulk or your past buying period. And you've already
yeah,
established them as somebody who values their time over bargain hunting.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, I think it's pretty
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. And being very clear about and I think of it as creating a filter,
Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
recognizing the ICP and so you establish the filter. And then operationally, what you want to do is help the salesperson by talking through, okay, what kind of questions or which questions do you need to ask of the prospect
Yeah.
to compare against your filter to help decide their fit to the ICP, right? And then in your CRM, you want to be able to provide the features in the CRM to help either identify where they are between the guardrails. So
Hmm.
salesperson's asking questions. Let's say it's half a dozen questions. He gathers the information about the opportunity and makes a judgment, comparing it against the filter in the CRM. There need you need to make sure that there is a way in the CRM to communicate how close, because sometimes it's guardrails, sometimes it's a checkbox, but sometimes it's guardrails, right? So you need to decide that, and then the training and coaching that the sales leader needs to do with the salesperson, and make adjustments as you start to learn more about how to tune the filter and get more
Yeah.
intentional about how to ask the questions.
So if I've accidentally found myself in the ICP degradation zone, what are the things that I can start thinking about and like first steps to get myself out of that situation and back into a better path?
If you're what role are you thinking
Let's
of, the
let's throw a sale, I
salesperson?
guess a sales leader who's going, okay,
Okay.
let's say a sales leader who's owning their mistake. They're like, you know what? I got excited. I'll let them expand the 20 minutes out. Like, that's my bad. I shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna clean up my mess. So like
Yeah.
what would you say, like besides being like, I'm gonna go call Glenn and bring him in.
You're
If
right.
somebody wants to
Right.
DIY a little bit, like what
Right.
would be like first steps that that sales leader could take to pull themselves out of that situation?
Well, let's see. One thing I can think of immediately, and this is a human nature thing, right?
Mhm.
S- People need to hear something 7 times before they hear it the first time.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing, is to make sure that we are, as sales leaders, are clearly communicating the ICP.
Hmm.
Uh, there could very well be some fine details about the ICP description that make it a little bit fuzzy for the salesperson. There
Yeah.
might be some issues with the filter. So if we need to tune the filter, do that, right? And have the salesperson participate in that, right? Um, then the other thing is, you know, tie the performance metrics to ICP so it becomes real to them weekly. So when you're
Yeah.
going over the weekly scorecard with them, um, a good example is, you need to make 100 phone calls to get 50 meetings, to get 20 proposals, to get 2 deals. If you in your CRM, if you identify those 20 proposals as 20 ICP proposals,
Hmm.
and then you can set a goal and say, well, 18 of those 20 at least have to be proposals submitted to an ICP,
Yeah.
a company or an opportunity that matches the ICP, and you have the salesperson fill in that metric on their scorecard, so that if they consistently put in a number and it's red, that they feel that.
Yeah.
So I think making them feel that, and making it really visible that we're not following, right? We're not following the process, we're not following the guidelines, is one thing. And then the other is, leadership and management. If they're just not getting it, maybe it's some situation where they're not in the right seat, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, I love the accountability aspect of it. It's like you can communicate all you want, but if you don't hold people accountable, the change isn't going to happen. Unless you're incredibly lucky to have a team of people who immediately understand it too. Because
yeah.
part of the problem is you didn't communicate it as the leader like appropriately. So like their understanding has evolved based on lack of clarity, and that's on you, not on them, to then just jump the second you say, "Well, wait a second."
Yeah.
Um, when you're talking about this accountability piece, which is definitely something you have to do you think that's something that you roll out at the same time in the communication? Is there a delay? How do you manage the rollout of those two pieces of more clarity and accountability?
I think it needs to happen as soon as there's any kind of a change or any kind of an emphasis from leadership.
Yeah.
right? So the sales leader presumably is on the leadership team, is
Yeah.
privy to all the conversations around, why do we have to say no to this kind of project going forward,
Yeah.
right? And fully understand the why, and then transform that conversation to the operational level
Yeah.
and say, okay, we're adjusting the targets a little bit to reflect the decisions that were made at the leadership level.
Hmm.
And right. And being a mid being a sales manager, this is one of the things about being a sales leader that's really tough, because it breaks your heart to be sitting with a salesperson that says, but I made my number,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I said, you told me I need to sell 1 million. I sold 1 million.
Yeah.
Okay, but 200,000 of it didn't weren't that's not business from ideal customers, and therefore eroded margin, and that's showing up as missing our profit number, and all of your buddies their bonus is less now because of that, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's hard, right? And that's one of the things that, why you have to have thick skin and do a really good job of being intentional when you're a sales manager, when you're a sales leader, because you will have those kind of things come up. But I think clarity around communication, reinforcement, the why, and accountability and it's all hard stuff, right? It's none of that part of the game is easy. So
From an ops perspective, I've been in the ops seat and looked at deals come through and been like, we're actively losing money. Like, and not a little bit of money. Like, yeah,
and then you get the
like,
finger pointing, and then
yeah,
you
and it wasn't, and I would just sit there and I'd look at it and I'd be like, look, based on this contract and these factors, I won't go get too technical, but this contract, this workflow that's going to happen, these things are going to go, we are going to lose, $50 for every dollar made in this thing. And just staring at it, like, how did this ever get through? Like, this is actively hurting the company. And like, it's one thing to just be like, I sold it and we broke even on the whole thing. Like, that in and of itself is like, well, why even be in business?
yeah,
And then to take it to the next level of now we're actually dragging the company down. And those sales leaders probably should have had a nice conversation with you. All right,
yeah,
so we're getting near the end. I
yep,
do want to
yep.
respect the time frame we put together, but I do want to get what's your final thought, your final thing? If I'm a sales leader, I'm noticing ICP degradation, or I'm in it, what would be the thing that you're like, all right, this is the thing I got to take away from this conversation?
Yeah, communication is key, and communicating upward and downward,
Mhm.
translating what the decisions are at the leadership level, include the why, include the accountability, and keep everything in aligned, right? It's all about making sure that the energy you're pouring in is contributing toward forward movement of the company and getting us to our goals. The and not with the right kind of revenue, because
Yeah.
not all revenues created equal.
Yeah. I can see the temptation. Every once in a while, I look at an opportunity and I go, oh, I'd like that money. And then I have to think about it and be like, no, I don't.
Yeah,
But,
got to be disciplined. Yeah.
well, Glenn, I really
Yep.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity. We'll talk
Yeah.
to you again.